Hello. Hi, everyone. How's it going? Jane here. Nice to see you all today. Welcome. Welcome to today's Get a Bit of Mix with me, Jane Arnison. Nice to see you again. I noticed that Drunk Bishop is already there. What's up, mate? How's it going? And welcome to everyone else who is their first time joining us today. You notice, those of you who have been here before, you notice my background's a bit different. I've set up my streaming in my studio so I can better sound, more fun, I guess, and all of that. So I hope you're all good wherever you are in the world. Hey, Hydrotech, what's up? Nice to see you. How's it going? Avtar Z, speak my name. Okay, I will. Who else we got here? Renara Rocks. Hey, how are you? Nice to see you. Nice to see you. Awesome. So, hey, everyone. Great. So I'm very excited to be here today, as always, talking, mixing, getting into it. A little bit about me. I should introduce myself for those of you who don't know me. I'm a mix engineer, which is lucky because I'm talking about mixing. I also produce and I make music like all of you out there. And today we're specializing in mixing, obviously. I'm Australian, if you can't tell. But I live in Berlin, and 7 o'clock Berlin time, wherever it is. What time is it wherever you are? I know we've got people from the US and all over the place. India, we often have lots of people from India. So welcome wherever you are. So it feels different. I'm in my new room and everything's a little bit different. Anyway, look, let's get into it. Today we're going to be doing Ninjas in Tokyo, and the artist I do not know. 7 in Italy as well. Hydrotech, Italian, yes. So, Bonnie Scotland, hey, what's up? Awesome. Hey, Scott. So, yeah, we're doing Ninjas in Tokyo, and I thought we'd change it up a little bit today because variety is the spice of life, right? And also, the idea for me doing these, when I do these streams, is that I try to show different things, so it's not just always the same every week for me, but mainly for you as well, so you get new insights. So this track today is, maybe I'll just switcheroo on over. So here we are. I'm in Ableton. For you Ableton heads, as promised, we are here. So we're doing Ninjas in Tokyo. Now it's like a movie trailer or a game trailer or something like this. It would work really well in surround sound 5.1 or something like that, or ambisonic mixing. We're just doing a stereo mix today, and there's lots of great stuff to think about. So it has a massive drum section. Let me give you a little bit of a tour through the track. Now I picked this because now if you're not doing film music, never fear. This is still really appropriate to everyone, because I think it's an interesting one because, you know, often our productions have lots of layers. If it's layers in terms of maybe you have a string section in your track, or maybe you're doing film type music or game music, but maybe it's a pop track that has loads and loads of vocals, or, you know, you have as I said, an orchestral layering within your beat production that you do. This is really appropriate for everyone. Because it gets really hard. If any of you know, once you start to add lots of tracks, when you go into mixing it, it's like you're like, how do I make everything fit? There's just a lot to do, okay? So that's why I thought this was a really good one to do, and it really makes you think about the role of each instrument, which instruments are working together, which are individual, and EQ becomes really important because we're thinking. Now, full disclosure, I have an orchestral background. I studied music composition in when I was at university. So I think it really helps, for me at least, to come in with an orchestral mind, thinking about, you know, individual instruments and then also groupings, and using EQ in a way to kind of think about where it should be placed. If you think of EQ and frequency and pitch and all that kind of stuff, okay? So, yes, cool. Nice to have different production styles covered. Yeah, it's nice to change it up, isn't it? Awesome. So that's the kind of thing. So there's going to be lots of EQ, lots of talking about that, thinking about panning, and of course compression is important. We have a massive drum section, really big drums and everything. So, quite excited there. With no further ado, I think I'll play the track. Now, as always, those of you who know the game by now, I start off by playing the mix that was sent. the premix, and then I will play mine, and then we deconstruct mine and we go through it together. Yes, it was submitted by Tatishi Starwalker. Awesome. Tatishi, if you're there, awesome track, mate. Okay, so let's do it. Now, again, when we listen to the mix or the premix, we always listen. I encourage you to get your pens out. If you're about to mix this track, what do you hear that you think you might want to change or improve, or issues that you think that there might be, or any of that kind of stuff? Okay, so excuse me. So let's check it out. Also, one final thing. This is a levels check as well. Okay, so if it's too loud, my voice is too soft, please let me know. We'll fix it up. Here we go. Have we got any sound? Oh, I think I'm soloing something. One sec. Ooh. Oh, yeah. Should be working. One sec, everyone. Oh, yeah. We're just in suspense because it hasn't started yet. Okay, here we go. Woo! All right. So that is the Ninjas in Tokyo. I think I got the name right. Ninjas in Tokyo, I do. Okay. So that was a premix that we have. So when I listened to that, I made a bunch of notes, and yeah, Android Queen says strong stuff. Yeah, it's really epic. Then that's a really good thing. That's the first thing that I always say, what is the thing that hits you about this first? And it's epic. It's big. It wants to be big, right? So that's my first note. And Hydrotech says it could sound huge with some Jane magic. Yes, that's what we're here to do today. Awesome. So I feel, my first feeling is that this wants to be big and exciting. Can you tell I'm a bit hyped up? It's because I've been mixing this. So it's been getting me excited, which is a good thing, I guess. So I've been really working to get that energy and that impact and that kind of excitement. So now, in terms of what I'm hearing and things that I feel are not working, is that I think that it feels to me as though the instruments are really fighting for attention, basically. So there's lots of there's kind of all of the sounds are kind of in there yelling at the same time, and if everyone's screaming, it ends up being noise, and we don't get any separation or difference, right? So that's the first thing, is I really felt like, okay, I need to figure out what all the sounds are, where they go, and what they're trying to say. So the second thing is that I felt that it was a bit too high in the high frequency. It was a bit too pushed up, and I think it needs to kind of ground itself a little bit more, have a bit more foundation. I also felt like it was a bit flat, so there weren't enough sounds that were sitting in the background, for us to have our foreground, our midground, and our background, which makes the overall mix bigger, massiver, right? Massiver, is that a word? It is now. Okay, so those are my notes. And I'm going to play my version, and we'll mix. I'll go A, B in between the two, and you can kind of hear where I'm at. So here we go again. We'll start with mine this time. the AB. AB again. This is the premix. Woo. Okay. So basically, and again, you know, it's mixing. We're not changing everything. We're just trying to get everything to find its place and to kind of come to life as much as it can. Okay. So let's start from the very beginning. Okay. So basically, the first thing I want to talk about in this session is first up is organization. Now, sometimes I know that you go organization, yawn, boring, switch off. I get it. But particularly for getting a big mix like this clear and into your head, I think it's really, really important because otherwise you're going to not know what the hell is going on, right? Okay, so let's have a listen, check it out. So basically, we've got lots of drums. So let's go through all the drums. I keep on putting my microphone like right in the middle of my screen. I don't know why. I just can't quite get it right. Anyway, okay. Maybe we'll go this way. Okay. Hang on. Let me just rearrange. Does that work? Yeah, that works. Okay. So there's loads of drums. There's taiko drums. There's low hits. I found here there are a bunch of drums that are doing the same job. So here, if we solo these, okay, so there are 3 different drums that are doing the same job. And they're also slightly time shifted, which is really good by taiko not taiko, sorry, I just saw that there, Tatashi, that they're slightly off, the trances are slightly off because it makes it seem like an ensemble, I guess. Okay, so sorry, is the screen blurry? Let me know if it is. Okay, so basically I went through and I tried to find drums that are playing the same part. So then I've got higher toms down here. Let's do it here. Okay, so it's really important for me to think about all the different rhythms and then organize them accordingly, okay? So let's check it out. There's a floor tom. Okay, so if I just make these all small, you can see I kind of categorize them into different things. So then we've got taiko drums here that are epic. Then we've got low hits. We've got the drum rhythms, as I told you. Then we have the floor tom, doing a slightly different rhythm, the higher toms. Then we have, okay, so those are the main drums. And then we have quarter hits. So okay, so really getting a sense of what is all the rhythmic stuff and what are they doing. There's a stick thing here, which probably should be lower, but whatever. Okay, so then I start to get a sense of we've got these, the way it's driving and then a couple of different rhythms that are adding to the complexity of the pattern. The taiko drums are the main character. And then we have the kind of what I called quarter hits that are coming in like a snare drum. And so that helps me to get a sense, rather than going, okay, I've got 30 individual drum tracks that I need to think of separately, I can start to go, okay, now I've got like 8 or something. How many do I have? Hang on. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and a little snare thing. Okay, so that makes it, that's kind of like a drum kit now. You know what I mean? So it makes it more manageable. As long as they're actually doing things that are collective, and generally speaking in an arrangement, they will be, because if they're not, they'll start to sound weird, right? They won't sound good together. So this has been well produced. There's a good, nice kind of sense of ensemble and individuation. So then that's how I organize the drums, okay? So then we've got metals. I organize them into metals, and they're, as you would expect, metal sounds. Okay, so they're... Okay, so then these are all working together for an overall rhythm that is really importantly working together, but there are certain parts of the sound that have to cut through, and I'll talk about that later. Okay, so we've got the metals. Then we have a bass sound that is adding support and also adding tension, because it's rising, the pitch is rising. Okay, so that pitch rising is important and it has to cut through. So we'll make a note of that, and I'm going to talk about that in a minute. Then there's a noise feed thing. Now I do want to go through all these sounds, because otherwise you won't be hearing what to listen for. Okay. Awesome sound, and it's kind of there. It's kind of a crossover between the drums actually and the brass section, and you'll hear that how it works later on. We've got a tubular bell, because tubular bells are just rock. Okay, cool. We have brass section. Now there's kind of divided it into two. Now this is Tatashi, if he's watching, he'll be like, everything's in a different organization, because I move things around, because there's two different brass parts, right? So the brass at the beginning, yeah, right? So really epic, big opening. Yes, okay, so this really bold, strong kind of brass in the beginning. And now that was different from, there was some brass stuff at the end. So I separated that and I called it end ensemble, because it worked. It was a mix of things. And this is the other brass. Okay, so you can see how I separated them, because they're two very different characters. So for me, it was important. I'm going to process them differently and I'm going to place them differently. So I wanted them to be clear and to be separate. Then we have strings. Hang on a second, in a second. Okay, so the strings role is, well, you tell me, what do you think the string role is in this? What's its job? If anyone said tension, you would be correct. Okay, so it's staying. It's a static kind of note. It's moving up and down with passing notes, but it's there is to create that kind of suspense and tension. Okay, then we're almost done, not quite. Then we have a bunch of flutes. Now there's lots of different flutes, and I decided just to put them together in the end. Maybe I'd change them as the mix went on, but we've got. Yes, Junior Life says suspense. Nice one. Okay, so we've got this kind of... It reminds me of Predator. I don't know why. I know it's a weird thing to be reminded of, but it reminds me of Predator. Anyway. Okay, so it's that kind of... is it a Andean flute sound? I'm not quite sure. Anyway. Then we have these other kinds of... Okay, now I potentially would separate these to the pad kind of string orchestral sounds and the more world music sounds, but I haven't done that so far. Okay, so we've got all these different, and then at the end we've got these ones. Hang on, these ones here. Okay, which is a final little trill, which is giving that final, it's a really beautiful transition into the final hit. Okay, now you thought we're finished. We're not quite. We've got one more thing, and that's this choir, this epic choir sounding. Okay, and that choir, as you can hear, is very heavily affected. It's very distorted. Okay, so that's everything. So, you would be right if you got this mix and you'd be a little intimidated. Like there's a lot going on there, right? Okay, but that's all good. We're here together and we'll do it together. So now, where did I start? Now with this, some of you might think that I favor drums and percussion. Maybe I do, I'm not quite sure. However, I am starting with the drums again. The reason that I'm starting with it is because it is the driving force, and it has these big hits, and that action, in my opinion, is the most important thing. And then the layers, the harmonic layers and the movement bring tension and bring emotion and mood, or setting the scene. But the important characterization, the most important energy, is those drums to hit. So that's why I'm going to start with them, because I think they're the most important. All right, so let's do that. Now, actually, before the drums, I'm going to start with the most important thing, which is this hit. I actually didn't show this. There's two more things I didn't show you. There's this. Okay, so this is the main hit. Now, the reason that this is the most important is because this is the busiest, the loudest, the most kind of, energetically it takes up the most space. So if we don't leave space for this when we're setting the rest of the mix up, then you're in trouble. And I think that may have been when Tatashi was doing this, that you don't have any space to go. You need to have headroom, basically, in order for this sound to have that impact, right? And that's one of the things that's really easy to get wrong, okay? So the first thing that I did was to get this sound right. So let's have a listen to it. I'm going to take stuff off and we're going to start from the beginning. Okay. Okay, so I actually left this dry with nothing on it, like that. Okay, and maybe I will actually for now, and I'll tell you why I turned that other stuff on later. Now let's start with the drums, and I don't think I'll... Oh, no, I will actually. Okay. I'm just going to go through things. So basically I started off actually with the bass rhythm, because that was the main driving thing, and it also started from the beginning and it goes all the way through. So when I went through it, I kind of was listening to the drums and decided what I felt like they needed. Now, if you notice here, there's no processing on the individual drums. I just processed the main drum, and I haven't done any EQ to this because I kind of thought that this was the foundation that I'm going to build the rest of the thing up with. Okay. Okay, but what I did add was compression, okay? And I also gained it up actually a bit, you can hear there. Okay. Now, let's also talk about my master bus. I have, as always, I have a mix bus compressor on. That's just the way I mix. Now, I have a limiter on for our session. I wouldn't normally mix into a limiter, but I have it for the stream, okay? So that's without the limiter. It's just balancing it a bit more, okay? So is it okay if I'm talking whilst I'm playing the sound, or is it not working? Just let me know, please. Okay, so that's what we're doing. So basically I set this up so it's at the right level, and this is where I'm starting off. Cool. Okay, so I'm happy with that. Then next thing, I'm happy with that. The next thing I decided to add another layer. So next one, I added the higher toms because they're the next most consistent part, right? Sorry. Ooh, this part here. Okay, and they kind of are working together actually. So let's listen to them together. Let's have a look at what I did with these. I think there was maybe a little bit more. No, okay. So with these, again, I made these a group, and then I applied compression again. And with these ones, I did some EQ. So let's have a listen. Now, what did I do here is I opted to take out a little bit of the kind of mid-range, because this is one of the issues in this mix, is that all of these sounds are kind of in all of the ranges, right? So we need to make decisions. Now, these drums sound fine by themselves, but if we're going to fit everything in, I need to start deciding what parts can we take away and still have the same character. So I took away quite a lot at 700. I did a little push at 3.5, and I actually boosted the 200 range because I wanted to get some more. Remember I said before, we want a little bit more foundation in the low frequencies. So that's what I did, and I think it works. I'll take the bass rhythm off and have a listen to that. I'll wait till they're all in. You can hear that difference. Okay, so that's good. And then with this, it works well. Good, sounding good. Then I have the floor tom. Now this floor tom, I had a few issues with it. So let's have a listen. It was a little bit slappy for me. Okay, so I was trying to think about how I can get more body and less slap, basically. Okay, so I did quite a... Now here I'm cleaning up the low frequencies. Then I cut out, again, some of that mid-range stuff and I rolled off the top. Okay. Then just a bit of compression, not too much. I actually might make that a bit faster, the release, because I felt it was just holding on a bit where it felt like the ambient noise was getting a bit too loud. So that's how you can tell with the release. And then for this one, I added a room reverb directly on the channel and mixed it in because it felt as though it was kind of getting lost. And again, I was only hearing the slap. I didn't hear any body. So I used the room reverb to make it feel a little bit like denser back that way, if that makes sense. So let's have a listen with that on. Okay, it just gives it a bit more body. Sounds a bit weird like that, but if we bring it into context with these drums that I've now gone through, I'll turn it off and then back on again. Maybe it's hard to hear. Anyway, I felt that worked. Okay. Cool. So now we've got those drums. Now that's the next thing is low hits. Now with these low hits, again, a lot of it is the EQ, and I think it's really important to talk about that. So let's listen to these. So by itself, it sounds cool, but it's also, again, it was taking up too much energy. You can see here, if I take that out, lots of information down there that you're just not even really hearing. So tightening that up. Now this bit here, there's a lot of the sounds have already got a lot of energy there. So I decided that I'm going to take that away. Okay, then compression. And then I did some more here. I doubled it because I wanted more, I guess. Yeah, release is a bit too long there. Okay, so again, just kind of trying to build this stuff up. And then the last thing is the taiko drums, which sound amazing, right? They sound really, really good. However, everything else needs to fit in, right? So this is the theme, I need to kind of think about this, and I decided that I would take out. Now, it all looks, to the naked eye, it looks as though I'm just scooping out randomly anywhere between 200 and 700, 800 hertz. I'm actually not, and that you'll know, well, you don't notice, but you have to take my word for it. Maybe we can tune in that the area that I'm reducing in that low mid kind of area is changing. So it's not just the same band. Now here it is. So potentially, if it was just by itself, I'd want to leave that in. But when we've got everything else around it, it works a little better if I cut it out. Okay, so now we can bring all these drums in. Cool. Okay, and that's working and it's sounding good. Now the final thing that I did, hang on, there's a few more things to play. So then I brought in the quarter hits, and the quarter hits are these bad boys. Okay, now these I did a little bit too. There was some problems with them. Okay, so with these, I initially just put some compression on it first. Right? Which is cool, but it also then it started to bring out the hit of the transient and the upper frequency part, which for me, when there's lots of other things in, remember we've got all the metal stuff that we have to still bring in. I thought, okay, this is going to be ouchy, basically. So then I EQ'd, and in the EQ, you can see that I brought down around that yucky bit. Well, it's not yucky. This is just a range of human hearing where we're very sensitive. It's around 3,500. Okay, so quite often that can get at your ears and can be not very pleasant. So you've got to watch out for that. And then I also rolled off some of the very high frequencies. Okay, so I wanted to have that foundation and that push rather than having it to be just that high frequency catch. Okay. So someone said, why is everything compressed? Very good question. Things are compressed because they have different transient impact, or I don't like the way that the transient envelope is reacting. So you can see, for example, here that they're different. By the waveforms, there's some are loud and some are quieter. So by compressing, that helps me to make them more even so that they're more evenly sitting in the mix. With some of the other sounds, like this one, for example, the low hit, I didn't like the way that it was really the transient of the front part of the sound was really loud and the rest was really soft. So I used compression to actually change the shape of the loudness contour, change the timbre and the way it moved. So that's one of the ways that we use compression. All right. So someone said about panning decisions, and yes, this is very important, and I'm going to talk about that, okay? So I'm just going to go through, first of all, talking about the EQ compression kind of main audio processing that I was doing, and then we'll get into the panning stuff as well. Okay, so now let's have a listen to all of these. If we just compare it for a second to the other track. Okay, so we've definitely got a much kind of more foundational, kind of powerful drum going on definitely there. Okay, so we can hear those drums are coming through a lot more, which is great. Okay, now the next thing that I want to talk about is the bass. I'm not going to talk about the metals individually because I did the same kind of stuff to these, okay? So there's some compression going on the group. There's some EQ. Now I chose different EQ for a specific reason. I chose this EQ here because it's a tube EQ. It is warm and doesn't bring out kind of scratchiness. It's kind of smoother. And I wanted to attenuate the top frequencies without losing the kind of top energy. So that's why I chose this specific EQ. And I also wanted to boost a little bit in the kind of what I'm calling the ouchie range without making it ouchie. So different EQs work differently. So for this, using a passive EQ, a tube EQ, it did the job that was more subtle. So let me take it off and then back on and you can hear what it's doing. So just with the metals. Okay, putting them in. Okay, so now it is pretty subtle, but again, when everything's in and the transients and stuff like that are kicking up, for me, it felt as though it was a way to still keep the metals like being metal and having that, but without it kind of attacking my ears. So that was that decision there. Okay, keeping on, moving on. The next thing I want to talk about is the bass. Now the bass, before I got to it, sounds like this. Sorry, it doesn't sound like that. It sounds like this. Okay, so it's very, very subtle in the mix. And I didn't think it was really coming through and doing its main job, right? Because I couldn't hear the melody in the mix. So I did something pretty drastic. I used a distortion. Now you can use lots of different distortions. There's an Ableton one that does a similar thing that looks like, which one is it? Is it this one? Yeah, so this, no, that's not it. Which one is it? Is it Overdrive, I think? No, I'll keep on looking. A dynamic tube, that's it. Okay, sorry. Okay, so the dynamic tube is actually modeled on this. We can look at it, A, B, C is relating to these 3 different distortion types. And then you have the drive, which is the drive, and the bias. Okay, so they work, that's pretty much the same. So if you don't have a culture vulture, you can use a dynamic tube in Ableton and they work very similarly. The dynamic tube, the UAD one has slightly more kind of thickness and body to it. They're both fine, whatever. This one's prettier. Okay, so what I did here, I think I just changed the settings. Well, we can redo it. Okay, so let's take it without. I mean, obviously it's louder as well, right? So I did want it to be louder. I could have gain staged it, but again, I did this kind of quickly. But I wanted to know, you can see here I've brought the mix back, so it's a parallel mix, and then I've kind of adjusted the output. So what I wanted to do here, what's the reason for doing this? The reason is to bring up the overtones, to bring out the the first octave above, or maybe the fifth partial, so that it helps the melody to come through and it helps it to cut through in the mix more. Okay, so let's now have a listen to this without. I'll put all the drums in and that. Okay, we can't hear it. And now we can. Okay, so now we can hear it. So that's important. We don't really hear you don't hear it the way we hear it when it's soloed, right? We don't hear the upper part. It brings our attention back down to the sub. Okay, so that's important and sounds good. All right, I added some EQ. I don't think it's nothing. I'm not sure that I'm sold on that EQ anyway. Okay, then we have the noise. Okay, now with this noise, I did a few things with it. Let's just listen to it by itself. And now the reason I want to walk you through, I should just pause for a second. The reason I wanted to walk you through all of these compression and EQ decisions, and particularly EQ decisions, is that for every sound, I'm thinking about how it's connecting and what its role is and where it's going to fit in the context of the other instruments. And so I think talking through how, you could EQ it in any way, but which way is the right way and which way is it going to work and fit with the other sound. So that's why I'm kind of talking through these things. And someone said, lots of change with just EQ and compression. And I'm really glad that you said that, because mixing is 90% EQ and compression. The other stuff that we do is, we do other things, but a really good mix engineer really is very astute with working with dynamics and working with frequency. So you can really do a lot with just that. Okay, so this is it without anything on. Now I should also probably at this point turn off the processing. Okay, now that is a sick sound. I love it. But the problem for me is that it was too much. It was too busy, and it was getting in, it was kind of either dominating everything or it was lost. Okay, so I had to make a decision about what part of that sound is cutting through the mix. So let's listen to it. I'll just turn off these bits that I haven't put in yet. And let's listen to it in the context of everything else that I've done so far. Okay, so it's that kind of upper stuff. So I moved my low cut around. All right, and I identified the area that's really cutting through, and I got rid of the low frequencies below that because I couldn't even hear them anyway, right? So when I kind of brought it in and I reduced it until I could hear it change. So that did a lot, and then I thought I'd go a bit extra with a radiator, which is just more distortion, basically, kind of, yeah, why not? I was experimenting with a chorus, but I didn't like it, so I turned it off, just if anyone's wondering. Okay, so now we've kind of got it all really happening, all of the drums and bass and noisy kind of distorty stuff. Then part 2 is the orchestral stuff. Now, I might just pause here for a second, and before I get into the orchestral stuff, actually, no, I'm going to keep on going because I do want to talk about panning, but I'm going to talk about that with everything at the end. Okay, so then the next thing we have is, and can you see also here how I'm thinking of it modularly? So I've got like little sections, and understanding and getting the sections to kind of work together and then bringing them back in with the whole, right? This is a way to tackle a big mix rather than trying to think of it all at the same time, because it will overwhelm you, absolutely. Okay, so now let's think about this stuff here. Let's go back a few steps. Okay, so with these low brass, let's have a listen to them. Now, the main thing that I did, in all honesty, with these low brass was turn them up, I think. Yeah, so these ones here, the really low stuff, the tuba and stuff, I turned them up. Okay, so that's the first thing. And then let's have a listen. With these ones, oh, why can I not hear that now? Let's see. Oh, I don't know what happened there. Anyway, maybe that's why. Let's try again. Okay. So this one is important to play. There's some comb filtering going on. Can you hear what comb filtering is? Is that too quiet to hear? Maybe I'll put the EQ on and you can... Sorry, not the EQ, the compression and gain. Okay, the kind of like fuzziness is comb filtering. And I kind of wish that wasn't there. I could have tried to kind of get rid of it, but I decided to leave it. But I think that it's important to kind of hear that. Comb filtering happens kind of phasing when the sounds are kind of the different waveforms are kind of crossing over and you can get a comb filtering effect. So I would have liked that to be a bit cleaner, but it's something that, we can work with. Someone asked me, do you gain stage every sound? And I gain stage every mix. Do I gain stage every sound? No, but I will listen to all of the sounds and listen to them in groups and make sure that they're all at the right level relative to each other, right? So I'm listening to this, particularly when I go to this group, I listen and I go, okay, I can't hear these two. They're really, really quiet and they're not coming through. So I gain stage them then. Often with mixes, and those who've watched me in the beginning, I will gain stage at the beginning. With something like this, when I'm kind of trying to think about how it's all working together, sometimes I gain stage like whilst I'm working, as you can see. I don't know where the sounds came from. There's it says here BBC Simbasso and BBC Tuba, so maybe there's a BBC sound pack. Yeah. But I think they're from everywhere. There's lots of different samples in here. Okay, so basically that was the main thing that I did. And then with this, I felt like I needed to shape it a little bit. So let's have a listen to it with me shaping it. So what I did here was I tried to bring out the low tones and to remove the kind of the kind of buzzy, resonant-y kind of stuff and reduce the sound of the comb filtering, which I think I did. So that's without. Okay, and then with the tuba, I did a similar kind of thing, but again, slightly different because they're trying to fit together. I don't want to make them be fighting for the same frequency space. Okay, so let's listen to these together. Great. Okay, now they sound epic. There wasn't much that needed to happen there. With the strings, again, I didn't do too much other than a little bit of EQ to adjust the low frequencies. With the string tremolo, I gained it up quite a lot because it was very quiet. And then I also did a little bit of stereo imaging here with this string because now I'm starting to think about how these groups of sounds are going to fit in together. So let's have a listen to that. I'll turn it off and then we can hear what I've done. Okay. So with the strings, let's listen to them all together. Okay, some EQ. Just cleaned it up. Little push in the low frequency. Then I did some stereo imaging. And I want you to hear that. Okay, so I slightly shifted. Now, what I did with it was I moved it out really wide on its axis. Well, not on its axis, I moved it really wide. Okay. Okay, so again, just kind of adjusting these. This potentially I might bring this louder. So whether I gain it up a bit more here or I decide that it might be nice to put it through like a compressor to give it a bit more tightness. I don't know. I think that's probably fine. Then then that's it. Okay. Right, so we're almost there. We have the end ensemble. And now with the end ensemble, there's a bunch of different instruments. Where we got? Hello. Oh, yeah. Okay, now I still am not 100% happy with this as I listen to it. I want it to feel like big, like this part here, like this one. Right, so here. So what I'm kind of thinking about doing, and I'm just going to do this off the top of my head here. I want these. I'm going to try something by, maybe I'll use the, let's try with the Sound Toys Alter Boy. I want to bring it down an octave. And now I'm not using this. This is not warped, so I can't use the octave change in Ableton. So I'm just going to use this one. I'll try. It could work. It might sound bad. Okay, so we're going to go link, pitch, and formant. Oh, oops, change key. It's actually kind of cool. I don't mind actually what it's adding there. So I'm going to say low. All right. So I just give it again that foundation that I felt like I felt like it was missing. We'll see how that goes. Okay. So with these again, what I've done also with these is that they felt a little flat, and so I decided to do with a kind of optical compressor to give them a bit of energy and life. Okay, so a subtle amount of compression because I'm not really using this majorly for the compression. I'm using this compressor for the sound of the optical circuit and the warmth that it brings. Okay, so there's not a huge amount of compression, and I might even gain it up a touch more. Okay, cool. All right. So I've kind of gone through most of the parts that I've done. So you can see here, lots with EQ, lots of thinking about where exactly I'm going to place the sounds. I haven't got to the flutes yet, but I did this similar kind of thing. Finding a placement and balancing them. I did some gain stage to make them fit, to get them to sit in a way that makes sense. And then if we can see EQ when I thought it was necessary, but not all the time. Now with these ones, I did quite a sharp Q cut because there was a squeaky kind of sound coming through. Maybe I should just play it. Oops, has to go again. Okay, so these. Okay, there was something there. It just didn't sound great, and it was cutting through. And it was particularly when I turned other things up, when I turned the group up, that cut through, and it didn't sound good. Okay, so yeah. All right, now the last thing talking about processing is, there's two things actually I want to talk about with processing. This one, first of all, the tenor choir. Now, if I turn everything off, it's really heavily affected, and I've got to say that I potentially would have liked it dry, plus this effect, because it's difficult for me to do things with it. Here it is. Okay, so you can hear that Tatashi, sorry if I'm getting your name wrong, Tatashi is made the decision to make it really processed. And that's cool. Like, I get that. And I think it works for it to cut through. But to my feeling, it's hard for me to get the body and the warmth of the choir. It's just really, really distorted, and it can make it feel a bit less enjoyable to listen to. So I would definitely like this as a layer, but I'd also like the more warmer round body sound. So let's have a look at what I did. First of all, we notice when I get into it that there's actually not a lot of information in that low area, so I just got rid of it. So any of that low information is actually just like low noise, like so it's not really helping anything. In fact, it would create more mud, and that's what it was doing. So I made the decision to get rid of it. And because it's got this kind of radio kind of like that cheap little guitar amp kind of distortion thing going, I was like, okay, so I'm just going to go for that and bring it out a little bit more and find the part of the tone that's coming through. So I did that, this bit here, right? And that's the part that is where there's the most tone. And then this part here where there's the most noise, I brought it down a bit, right? Cool. Okay, so that kind of gets it to work a little bit better I kind of got rid of the noise without getting it to, so that it wouldn't cut through the mix. Then I was thinking about what I did with the strings and thinking about the placement and stuff, and then I decided to use a stereo imager in a different way here to change the axis, to kind of move it around the stereo field a little bit. So let's have a listen to that. Okay, so you will hear that in the context in the mix. And then, well, there's compression, which I also use as a gain, as you can hear. Obviously, I gained it up. Take all these off. Okay, so with them all in, I think it really helps it to kind of find its place in the mix better. Now I can hear that bass is coming through too much. I think I did something weird here to turn it up. I don't know what I did, but it's too loud. Better. Oh, okay. And one very important thing is that I have, because I was thinking those drums are not feeling big enough, right? So once I kind of started to set stuff up, I realized that the drums need to, kind of want them to be bigger. So I really like tape, and for these drums, it helps them to feel big, but also glued together, right? So I did that. So let's hear, and I think I pushed the gain as well on this. Okay, getting there. Someone was asking me, now I've kind of gone through and I haven't answered many questions. Before I go and talk about panning, I'll just check it out. So someone is, sorry, my computer's a little bit further away than normal and I'm finding it hard to read. So Mikor Vanderlik, I'm so sorry, I can't quite say your name. Do you check the phase of everything? Yes, I do. Now, the question is how to check the phase, and I do it by ear, so I can generally hear if something's out of phase, and if I have any problems, particularly if when two sounds, A, B a sound with another sound, and if they cancel each other out, there's a problem, right? So as you build, the way to check phase is as you build in instruments playing together, you listen out for what happens when you add multiple sounds together. Okay, that's in my opinion, the best way and fastest and most intuitive way to check phase. If you go, I think something's wrong, then you investigate further. For me, I do something really simple like flip the phase, and if it changes it, then I investigate further, look at the waveform, yada yada. Okay, time flies when you're mixing epic tunes. Cool. Okay. So I'm just seeing if there's any more questions. Do you not go out of stereo phase when you're going so wide? I mean, stereo widening is playing with phase. That's the point of it. So yes, you are. And then it's, again, thinking about checking it in mono to see if it's still there and see how it's working in context with the other sounds and things like that. So, yes, it's definitely important to be aware of it, I think. These are all anything we're working with, stereo or chorus or phasing, they're all phase processes, right? Even mid-side EQ or something with the EQ8 in Ableton, it's all playing with phase. So you do have to be mindful of that. Okay, Hydrotech saying, what would you suggest for mastering this kind of music? Be conservative. Okay, mastering is a whole other question, but what I would say about this is that when you get to the master, you've got to think about the delivery. So if this is actually a trailer for a movie, there would be sound effects, maybe dialogue, other things going on. So then, how you master it is you've got to think about that it has to be to minus 23 LUFS, I think. Sorry, I'm started to hiccup here. And there is a range of other things to think about. So in terms of mastering, like, I'm not a master engineer. I do master sometimes, but it's not my main thing. But always I would say, when you've got the opportunity to get it right in the mix, get it right in the mix. And then the mastering is not for fixing up bad mix problems. It's for getting it ready. It's doing what mastering is, right? So mixing is a place that you get it to sound great. And then mastering is loudness adjustments, maybe some, spatial, fine EQ, things like that, and stereo, kind of the stereo field. But do the mix and get the mix sounding amazing. And then in terms of the mastering being conservative, yes, you shouldn't need if you've got it sounding amazing in the mix. Okay. All right. So now I said I was going to talk about panning. Oh, there is, hang on, as always, there's one other thing. Now, there are a few effects, and I haven't talked about those. So, again, it's an EQ. This is a masterclass in EQ today. So, let's have a listen to this riser. Oh, hang on. Is it on? Oh, yeah. Woo. Okay, so it's a really cool riser. I really like it. But, again, it wasn't cutting through the mix. And so I needed to think about it. So here I did some very specific EQ. Now I cut out some of the low frequencies. I'll take all these off and let's build it in. Okay. So first thing, cut out the lows, right? I cut out some of that stuff because we weren't hearing it and it was coming in so soft, and we've got the drums and everything else. We've got other sounds. So it's like, it's not helping. So I got rid of it. The next thing was that I did quite a dip down here because there was a lot of noise, a lot of energy in that range. So let's hear that. I'll do it again. Okay, so I decided to cut that out. I'm trying to make the end more impactful, right? And then the final thing was that I did a shelf. And let's hear how that works in the end. Okay, so that's actually quite dramatic, and I wouldn't normally do that, but it's a riser. It's supposed to be dramatic. So we want to see how that works in the mix. So let's now listen to that. I'll turn it off, and then we'll turn it back on. Okay, so it's just there. Now let's see whether mine improved it. Okay, so really definitely getting that. So I potentially think it might even need some more, but so far with the EQ, that's definitely done some good help. Now, the final things we're going to talk about space. So we're going to talk about the reverb that I used, and I used a really specific reverb. I used the SSL reverb, the Flex Verb. Now, I use this as opposed to, my other favorite is Valhalla Verb. I felt that it would be better. And now thinking about, I think choosing the right reverb space is really important for the success of a mix. Now for this, I wanted a really, really natural sounding room, and I want it to be really clear and not having any artifacts or anything like that. So I went for this specific reverb. You can have, there's the Waves R verb, there's the Logic reverbs are good. Even the standard Pro Tools reverb. The way, there's a few of them. But thinking about a reverb that is very like clean, I guess, and not colored and doesn't have like this character. So, and I went for, because it's orchestral stuff, I chose an orchestral hall. I also started off with a large hall, and then I realized fairly quickly that it was getting like really messy. So I haven't had this on, so now I'll turn it on, and it will also fill out the mix and make it feel much bigger, hopefully. So let's have a listen. Without it. With. This is just the reverb. Let's have a listen. Let's have a listen to the big one, and hopefully you can hear the difference. I could hear maybe. It just really felt to me less getting in the way. Now I'll try and change them. I don't know if you can hear this. I will try and do it again. So I'll go the large one, and then I'll go the small one. It is subtle, and maybe you can't entirely hear it through the stream. But again, really thinking about really listening into the back part of the sound in the virtual sound mix, right? Really listening to what's happening right up the back there, not just being distracted by what's in front of you. Okay. So the final thing to talk about now, it is 8, so we'll finish up soon, and I'll take your questions. So I know there've been questions coming in, so if I haven't answered them, maybe you can throw them back in the chat, and I'll go through and answer them. So panning was really important for this, and thinking about, if we kind of just take the drums for starters. Now, the way that I did them, again, it's intuitive. There's not like a rule book here, but I do have as I said, I have a history in orchestral writing, like a orchestral composer. So for me, a knowledge of how the orchestra is laid out is helpful. So I didn't actually follow this exactly, but thinking about, also you don't need to be trained as a composer, like get a picture of the orchestra layout. And the drums often is in a row up the back, and then you have the brass in a row, the woodwinds, and then the strings go to the left and the right, right? So, hey, who just joined? Or hey, music, what's up? How's it going? So thinking about the placement is really important. So I place the drums kind of like imagining that they're like, in the back, smashing away, the taiko's over there, and then the bass drum's there, and so thinking about positioning it in that way, and making sure the other thing that's in your mind is that you're balancing the, balancing the frequency. So you don't want to have too much bass over here and not enough bass frequency over there. So when I had more bass frequency in the drums on the left, I had to remember that I've got to think about the bass frequencies in the strings or in the brass over on the right-hand side if I felt like it was unbalanced, or rebalance it, okay? So I don't really have a guideline to say put it 45 degrees here and 45 degrees there, but for me, with thinking about the space, imagine yourself in the room and really think about, where it will make sense for you to be hearing these things, and whether or not ultimately it feels balanced for you. Yeah. Certain things like this sound were in the middle because they were this slap, the snare sound. And why did I put them in the middle? Because the snare is a really loud sound, and almost regardless of where it's positioned, it generally dominates the room. Anyone will know that from working with drums. Okay, so they stayed in the middle. It had more impact when it stayed in the middle as well. So let's have a little listen to that. I'll just put it to where it comes. Okay, so if I doesn't have the same impact. Right? So certain things, if I tried to see does it work if they move around, if they feel less powerful, then you go, no, this one wants to be mono, wants to be right up the center, bam, right? Okay. With the, what else is interesting to say? So in terms of the panning, again, so you can see here, now this is again, I just did this intuitively, but it's the same thing. I have one in the middle of my brass, the low one, and then I have the two different low sounds put out on the side, and then I have the middle and the high put to the left and the right. And you can see here that they're around the other way, because obviously I started with them like this, but then I realized they sounded like they were off balance. So I'll just try and give you an example of that one as well. Okay. So it would just be this bit here, I guess. Okay, so I changed them. Now I changed that around based on what I heard of the other instruments that were in the mix, okay? So that, I think, is it for today. Also, I guess the final thing, as I was talking about reverb, is that the placement of the sounds in reverb, I was thinking about, again, where I want them to be, how clear or diffuse I want them to be in the mix. Okay. We'll leave that there. Now, look, I've gotten through the whole of the session and I haven't even given ADSR a big up yet. ADSR is, as you all know, if you don't know, you should know by now, it's an amazing portal for all things sound, production, education, sample packs, tutorials, plugins, the rest of it. So make sure you check it out if you haven't. I've been really getting into the samples and loving the sample manager in the last couple of weeks. So there's so much really great stuff there. Make sure you check it out. Now I'm going to go closer here. Maybe I'll switch views. Let's check out what we've got. Okay, so Bart Benton is saying, what's your take on using your sends versus adding spatial effects on the channel? That's a really good question, and thank you for that. It's a really specific thing, right? So if you're going to be using reverb in a way that you want sounds to feel as though they're in a space, like what I did here is with the main reverb, and they're all trying to give a sense that the sounds are happening in like a concert hall or something, it's very important to use a send. Why? Number one is that I want a number of sounds to go into that one reverb unit. And then all of the sounds are going to move around in that virtual space together and create a unity of this space, this virtual space that they're in, right? You can't do that if I stack them up and put them all on, multiple reverbs on one channel. So that's the most important thing. You also notice that sometimes, oh, hang on, I moved away from the mic there. You'll also notice that sometimes I had a room or something directly on the track, like with the low tom. I think I had it directly on and mixed in. Like I can show you like this, for example. Okay, like this one here. Okay, so I have the Valhalla room and I've mixed it in. Now, I use that for a really, really specific reason. I use a reverb directly on a channel for two reasons. I'll come back. Big face. Two reasons. One is in production, I'm sound designing and I want to change the sound. Cool. Okay. Then I will change it. When I'm mixing, I don't do that because I'm mixing. I'm not here to change the sound of things, right? So what I'm doing here in mixing is I'm trying to change, like, it all gets a bit weird when you start to think about virtual spaces. I'm trying to change the virtual space or the density or the body of the sound itself. So I want to change the kind of the transient nature of that sound so it will fit in the mix better, basically. The other thing is if I want to diffuse the transient, so it's cutting through too much, it's too attacky, we can use things like reverbs, rooms, plates, with like short plates, also choruses, anything working with phase and repetition of the signal, and it will can diffuse the transient if they're hitting too hard. So that's the reason that I would use on a channel if I want to mess with the transient shape of the sound. It goes parallel when I'm trying to create spaces. Hope that answered your question. Okay. Yeah, so Bart's saying it's a matter of diffusion as well. Exactly. Nice one, Bart. Okay. What else we got? It's Hydrotech. Good insights. Thanks, mate. Thank you for joining. I've got a track of yours on the go, I think, for a future session. Okay. What else have we got? Hey, from Mexico, Noche Astral. How are you? Nice to see you there. Look, I'm getting all hot in the face. I've been working so hard in this mix. Okay, let's see what else we've got. Oh, that's good, but yeah, you're definitely getting the hang of it. It sounds like it. If you understand the distinction there, then you're definitely on the go with that. Cool. Okay, what do we got? Awesome. Yeah, Hydrotech, it's coming soon. Okay, so any more questions? If I haven't answered your question, please, now's the time to throw it on in. Cool. Someone's asking, where can you hear some of my work? Thank you for that. You can hear it on my website, janearnison.com. There's a bunch of different things I've mixed, and if you want to hear my band project, that's called Evol, and other places. I also have a kind of piano album that I did a couple of years ago. There's lots of stuff around, so check out my website. It's probably the best place. Awesome. All right, everyone. Great. I guess that's a wrap for today. Thank you, everyone, for all of your questions and for the chats and bringing the vibes. And we will do this again, no doubt. If you want your track mixed, please join the Discord and submit your stems, and they will be sent on to me, and I will check it out and give it a mix. Next week, this time next week, I'm doing part 2 in my production sessions. I think I'm going to do part 2 on vocals, or maybe I'll do something with MIDI. I haven't decided yet. Does anyone do you have a preference? MIDI processing and programming, or vocals? What do you reckon? Let me know. Let us know on the Discord throughout the week, and we'll set it up based on what you're interested in. Okay, everyone. That is a wrap. Catch you later. Bye.